I'm Justin Roberts of Business News, and with me to discuss Tongaat's rights issue is Opportune Investments founder Chris Logan. Tongaat shares were close to 50% lower at one point today, now around the 25% mark. On a market cap of around 1 billion rand, this rights issue is big. Before we get into that, Chris, how exactly did Tongaat find themselves in this position?
Thanks, Justin. Years and years of mismanagement, wholesale mismanagement, which the executive then tried to cover up with accounting falsification and fraud. The mismanagement included capital misallocation. For instance, they spent something like 11 billion rand on sugar assets, sold off a whole lot of prime property, coastal property to finance some of that, and incurred debt. And a lot of the capital that they spent turned out to be almost worthless. So it was wholesale mismanagement. And the fraud was something like 7 years. And when the fraud was actually eventually uncovered, the company went from having something like 11 billion of equity to negative equity, technically insolvent. So it was a real mess.
They said that the rights issue could be as much as 4 billion rand. They said 2 billion has been underwritten. Their market cap is only 1 billion rand. If I own 100,000 rands worth of Tongaat stock, how much am I going to be expected as a shareholder to cough up to keep my pro rata shareholding in the business?
Yeah, well, the terms have still got to be announced, what price they're going to pitch it at. And there's quite a lot of guesswork, although the business has still technically got no negative equity. They have stated that the fair value of the assets is greater than the value of the liabilities, meaning that some of the assets are understated. So that's the one thing. There also is an undisclosed asset, or what I would call a contingent asset. They've got a claim outstanding against Deloitte for signing off on 7 years of falsified accounts, which I think could be quite big. So there's a lot of guesswork. Obviously, what the rights issue will do will be to remove the financial risk that this thing goes belly up.
When a rights issue is as dilutive as this will be, what price around do you expect the rights issue to be issued at? I remember last year with City Lodge, there was a similar kind of situation, massive rights issue, and the rights issue was issued at around an 80% discount to its current share price. Are you expecting a similar theme with Tongaat?
I don't know about 80. I mean, so the market's currently at 701. They obviously said there's going to be a discount. If I had to guess, I'd guess it's something like potentially 4 rand, just as a pure guess. But, they need to really provide more clarity on the underlying fair value of the assets and prospects.
The lion's share of Tongaat's asset base is land, as you mentioned, which is valued at billions of rands, or at least on their balance sheet. There were announcements relating to talks on the sale of a portion of the land earlier on in the year. I'm assuming these talks have come to a standstill. Would a rights issue have been able to be avoided if a deal would have managed to take place?
There was probably always going to needed to be probably some capital raise, unless they were able to sell some of their big strategic assets or raise equity against some of their big strategic assets, like their sugar mills, which they haven't been able to do. And realize they've gone through the worst of times on the land side because of COVID and all the rest. So, and then there was one other thing which really hurt them, which was unexpected, was they lost 25,000 tons of sugar on the refining side, which was equated to hundreds and hundreds of millions of rand. So they've had a lot of things go wrong over the last year or two. which has complicated it. And I guess when you inherit a desperate situation like this, things are going to go wrong, where the underlying company has been poorly managed and you're under tremendous pressure.
Chris, 2 questions. Was this avoidable? And then secondly, do you see light at the end of the tunnel if this rights issue does go through for Tongaat?
Yeah, I think how events have transpired, it wasn't avoidable, with land sales effectively drying up, with them not being able to bring in equity on the sugar milling side, what they called, I think, Milko. And, also with, SA derating. Once this is cleared out, yeah, it'll be interesting company to look at, particularly as a play on South Africa. I mean, some things have started going their way, the higher international sugar price, for instance. But it will still be a long haul, and it will be interesting to see what the, Magister Investments brings to the table. I'm sure they must have a plan here. So yeah, there's a lot that needs to be disclosed by Tongaat.
The last time we spoke, Tongaat had appointed a new operational team due to mishaps, which you mentioned earlier. Have they provided any clarity on operations or just how the performance of the core business is going at the moment?
No, they did talk about it at the AGM, and it sounded as if, they increased the pressure, certainly on the sugar side and the refining, and the assets were badly maintained, and the thing blew up. So there's been no update. They say they're attending to all those things. Obviously, there are going to be interims very soon. So, yeah.
What are the consequences in this kind of situation to not follow a rights issue? Would you consider that, or do you think that's just not an option whatsoever?
Yeah, fortunately, I haven't been a shareholder for quite some time, but it could be an opportunity. You need to look at it, because the rights issue will be positive in that it will take the financial risk out of this company. And, I think the company then needs to provide shareholders with a lot of detail of the future, now that they've got a clean slate on debt. So, yeah, particularly if the rights issue is pitched at a very low price, there could be quite a substantial rally, once it's all settled. But ultimately, it will hinge on, what the strategic plans are and how they can execute and unlock the value in the assets like land and sugar. And as you know, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, there's always going to be guesswork around those assets.
The next set of results, we can sort of get better insight. You've just mentioned.
Well, it will be for the interims to 30th of September. So my guess is there should be an announcement pretty soon, And they were going well in the first half of last year. It was in the second half when they had all these mishaps around sugar. So it will be an interesting set of results. But certainly, there haven't been the class action lawsuits like Steinhoff and all the rest. In some way, it was deserved. But it's just been a real nightmare for anyone who got caught up in this.